Welcome back to Your Strategist Is In. I'm Dr. Loren M. Hill, your academic career advancement coach. This is the December episode in our three-part end-of-year arc. November's noticing, December's choosing, and January is reimagining. Last month, we named the truth of the moment. The ground beneath higher education is shifting, as you know, I always say, right? So, emotionally, structurally, psychologically, and many of us entered into November carrying an unspoken weight, not burnout, not failure, but ambiguity. December asked us to do something different, not to work harder, not to prove anything, not to fix the entire year in the final 2 weeks. December actually asked us to choose. Choose what stays, choose what goes, and what deserves to cross the threshold into the new year. Wherever you are, walking, driving, or taking a break between final deadlines, let your shoulders soften. Let your breath slow for just a moment, and let's begin by leaning in. So, December is a threshold. I like to think of it as a hinge. It's a quiet turning point inside of a loud system. It's the end of the year, and we've got the semester that's still demanding things from us. Emails multiply, grading stacks up, budget tighten, and planning cycles hit their peak. Because, as you know, even though it's the end of the calendar year, it's not the end of what we call the academic year, right? So it is a hinge because it's the end of the academic year, end of the calendar year, not the end of the academic year. It's a break, but it's not quite the midpoint. There's a lot of things that go on, right? So emotionally, this month settles into a different tone, right? We've got the holiday seasons, we've got all these demands going on, and the noise drops just enough if you allow it to hear yourself align. So, most of the fall requires a very reactive posture, responding to crises, shifting mandates, unexpected changes, the constant rebalancing that goes on with higher ed because it demands such. And you spend months adapting to the institution's timeline. But December is interesting because it offers a rare opportunity to shift some of those timelines. And in that shifting, you can ask yourself what you need, right? So you don't want to think so much about, what the department needs, what the campus needs, what the college needs, what your calendar needs, not even necessarily your role, but you, because again, December is a little different, right? So even if you're an administrator, it gets a little quiet around campus in December. So if you allow yourself some space to reflect, this is a moment when your professional identity can meet your human identity, when you can actually see the cost of holding everything together, when the truth you've been carrying finally becomes audible. So December isn't demanding a resolution, it's offering discernment. Mm. So in November, we talked about ambiguity, the emotional culprit masquerading as exhaustion. Ambiguity blurs edges. It erupts uncertainty. And then it kind of like frays the boundaries between what matters and what merely demands attention if you reflect on it carefully. But here's the thing, you can't release what you haven't named, and you can't choose to carry what you want until you acknowledge what's already in your hands. So when we think about November and December, and we're moving into a different direction, think about this. Discernment is not clarity. Clarity describes, and discernment decides. So discernment is slower, quieter, and more courageous. It doesn't ask what's happening, but it does ask what matters to me now. Doesn't ask what's expected of me, but it does ask what aligns with who I am becoming. So December gives us a single guiding question. What am I choosing to carry? So let's think back to our metaphor from November, the trees releasing their leaves through abscission. By December, the leaves are on the ground. The letting go has already begun. The tree isn't failing, it isn't losing, it's choosing. And I was just driving up the street the other day and I could see so many leaves from the trees that I've talked to you all about that line my street. And it's just a beautiful thing to behold, right? So if you think about it that way, that this process goes on, it's not a bad thing. It's just something that nature provides to keep these entities growing, right? So back to this, it releases what no longer protects its energy. It conserves what sustains its life, and it prepares for a new season by not carrying what cannot survive the winter. It's not collapse, it's wisdom. So I want to ask you directly, where in your work is an abscission moment already happening? Hmm. Let me give you a couple questions to think about. Maybe it's a role you've outgrown. Maybe it's an expectation that has quietly turned into a burden. Maybe it's an emotional labor you've been performing out of habit and not alignment. Maybe it's a version of excellence that belongs to a chapter in the past and not this one. You may have already felt some of the signals, such as, a quiet no in your body or an ache where you know before your mind knows, right? It's time. It's time to let it go. It's time to go. It's time to move on. It's time to cut this thing. It is time. In fact, it may have already been time. So for me, it was when I finally realized during a conversation with someone that I really trusted and I was pouring into her, like, oh, I'm gonna put this together and I'm gonna show, why the resources could be reallocated this way, why we need to, realign. And I was just talking about all of these things that I could do to demonstrate why these decisions need to be made for this particular department. And she said to me, you're putting a lot of effort into an environment that doesn't really see or value your contribution. And it kind of like stopped me cold because here I thought, wow, I'm going to show the numbers, I'm going to show the research, I'm going to show the competitors. And when she said that, I thought, you're right. I've already been demonstrating all of these things and nothing seems to work. So that was one part of it. Then, upon reflection in that moment, all of the things that were happening to me sort of just shown like a movie right before my eyes, right? I was losing weight. My hair was falling out in patches. I had mounting anxiety each morning as I prepared to go to work. And I just, for whatever reason, I still was trying to push through to show them that what I had to offer was valuable. Now, granted, what I had to offer was absolutely valuable, but it wasn't valued by them. So that was when I went from clarity to discernment. I had a moment of clarity. I was able to name some things. And once that happened, I was able to look very closely at what really mattered most to me. And from there, I was able to make my next moves. So I also had to kind of reckon that it wasn't about abandoning responsibility, it was about honoring my truth. And not all work is meant to be carried across seasons. So once I made that decision, I also realized that some things I would have to let go of, and some things I would be able to take with me. So discernment rarely arrives in dramatic moments. It shows up in small human signs. And this is so true because when I looked back over my time there, I thought, wow, these were all things that were pointing to what needed to be cut, but I just wasn't ready to see it. So, no judgment on myself, no judgment on you. These are just opportunities to reflect and have some growth. So, what are some of the examples? Well, how about this? The email you haven't opened because you already know it asks you to do more than you can give. Okay. The meeting where you nodded along while something inside of you whispered, this is not for me. I don't know what they're talking about, but this is not for me. And I just can't really keep up a good front anymore. But despite all that, you try and try and try. The project that's kept alive because other people expected, even though the sparks left months ago. And, there's some strategies for how you can come out of these. And some we've already talked about, and others, you will discover as you do this work. But again, I'm here to partner with you. So these micro moments carry information. They reveal where your energy is thinning, where your values are shifting, and where your identity is asking for release or renewal. They're quiet, but they're not subtle. Your body knows, your calendar knows, and your spirit knows. December asks you to trust that knowing. And then here's something else I would add. Sometimes we've been doing it for so long that we have shut off that part of our body that is giving us the signals. So who's that trusted advisor? Remember, I was talking to someone and I was really in my head about all the strategies that I was going to run through to help this institution understand why, what I was offering about how to restructure was valuable. And it just took her saying to me in that moment, look, none of that is going to work. So sometimes you need an external to help you sort of reorient yourself and give you like that look, right? Like, wait, what do you mean you've had, this many projects and how are you sleeping at night? Or what do you mean you got that contract and this is how it's working itself out? Like, we really do need to have not just ourselves sometimes, but someone else who we really trust that we can bounce these things off of. So let's revisit some of our friends that we met in November. All right. So remember Dr. Patel, that was purpose versus metrics. She built a community engaged program for students that they totally rely on. And this fall, leadership wanted the quantifiable ROI. The word didn't change, but the measure did. December's discernment for her became what part of my purpose still belongs to me? And what part am I carrying because someone else has moved the goalpost? For Alex, it's excellence redefined. So remember, Alex had the AI assisted advising arrive in student affairs. It was helpful, but flattening because their excellence has always been very deeply human. So December's question is, what version of excellence honors who I am, not just what the system rewards? Next, we've got Maria, the emotional container. As an associate dean, she holds everyone's anxiety, everyone's disappointment, and everyone's urgency. December revealed the truth. Some of this weight was never mine to carry. Hmm. Jordan, the contract lecturer, brilliant teacher, exceptional mentor, perpetually evaluated by shifting, ambiguous criteria. So December asked, what am I trying to prove and to whom? These stories aren't about performance, they're about identity, they're about worth, and they're about choosing what really belongs to you. So, higher ed is not a stable landscape. It is a fault line, quiet pressure, sudden shifts, and lasting impacts. It's also a threshold, a place you cross again and again, professionally and personally. So when the landscape changes, your load cannot remain the same. Trying to carry last year's expectations into a different terrain only increases your emotional drag. So instead of asking, why can't I carry everything? Ask the more honest question. Why am I expecting myself to? December isn't asking you to do more, it's asking you to do less with intention. December's guided discernment. Take one slow breath, let your shoulders rise, then exhale. These questions are not tasks, they're invitations. Pause between each one if you need. What stayed meaningful for me this year? Because meaning deserves to be carried. What became thin or hollow? Not bad, just no longer alive. What am I pretending I can still carry? Because pretending has its own weight. What truth have I already named privately but haven't honored publicly? Your body often tells the truth before your calendar does. What expectations have I been holding on to out of fear and not alignment? Fear is a poor way to move through your decision process. So next, what am I afraid will happen if I release this? Fear points to a tender place that deserves care. So what are you fearful of? In some circles, there's the acronym about fear, and it is false evidence appearing real. So maybe there's something really happening, like, downsizing, institutions closing, budgets being precarious. But think about what's at the core of that and pay attention to it, right? From there, you can think about how to carry what you need to carry forward and what you need to really trim. So, for example, I was working with someone recently, and yes, we're in a climate of like a lot of job loss in higher ed. However, this person is carrying a lot of service. So, one of the things that I said to her was service is great, but maybe you could trim it a little because you need to go inward and really think about what's going to help you keep your job because it's a soft money position. So anything that is not directly related to that, you want to try to eliminate as much of it as possible. However, you don't want to throw it all out because the community engagements or the service opportunities give you these chances to be around people who may be able to, you can network with, and you may be able to find some other jobs, right? So I just want you to be mindful and thoughtful and strategic about that. So the next is going to be which values you want to have you lead into the next year. So let your future identity speak to you. And then finally, what am I choosing consciously to carry forward? Because choice is a form of power. This is also the season where people make New Year's resolutions. Most don't last, not because people are weak, but because the resolutions come from pressure and not discernment. But if you're doing something different this time by being very intentional, you're choosing what matters. When your resolutions emerge from what you intentionally carry rather than what you think you should become, you build a year that fits you instead of one where you just perform. So, December's simple humane practices are these. List what you carried this year, whether that's visible labor, invisible labor, emotional labor, or identity labor. Circle what still feels alive. Alive work deserves attention. Put a dot next to what feels thin. These are the leaves that are already loosening. Put a star next to what feels like a quiet no, because that's obsession speaking. Choose three things to carry forward. Yes, I said three. Not because you're limited, but because you're being intentional. Your next season begins with what you choose, not what you inherit. As you move through December, remember, you're not meant to carry every expectation placed on you. You're not meant to sustain every metric that changes around you. You're not meant to bend yourself around shifting structures indefinitely. You are meant to evolve. You are meant to release. You are meant to choose. The year will turn with or without your permission. Let your choosing be the part you do with intention. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for being a steady force in a shifting field. This is December's work, choosing what stays, choosing what goes, choosing what you carry into the new year. I'm Dr. Loren M. Hill, and this has been Your Strategist is In. I'll see you in January. Until then, lead with clarity, courage, and capacity.